Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the San Diego Community College District Chancellor's Forum. My name is Amy Gallagher. I am the Acting Vice Chancellor for People, Culture, and Technology Services. And today with us, we have Dr. Brian King. So Dr. King, we have several questions for you as well as questions from the audience. If you could begin by giving a short introduction of who you are, and then we will start with the questions, and you have 1 hour.
Thank you very much. Well, I very much appreciate everyone being here today. As Amy said, my name is Brian King. I am Chancellor of the Los Rios Community College District. Anybody know where that is? Sacramento. And I have served since 2013. So I want to thank everyone who has been involved in the search process for being welcoming and for learning so much about the district. That this process is a great opportunity for a candidate like me to learn about what a wonderful place the San Diego Community College District is. Before I was Chancellor at the Los Rios Community College District, I served as President Superintendent in Santa Cruz at Cabrillo College for 9 years. So I have spent quite a bit of time now in California working with our students, and am just so excited to have an opportunity to answer some questions today and talk about my background and experience and explain why I would be incredibly excited to be the next Chancellor for the San Diego Community College District.
Okay, so question number 1. Many of our students who attend our colleges come from various disadvantaged backgrounds, including former foster youth, justice impacted, and undocumented students, to name a few. What experiences do you have working with special populations, and what effective support would you propose for a district with a diverse student population and equally diverse geographical reach?
I am inspired every day by the challenges that our students overcome. The Sacramento region is similar to the San Diego region in that our students are incredibly and wonderfully diverse, both in terms of racial and ethnic diversity and also socioeconomic diversity. So the question listed several different groups who have unique challenges, including foster youth, justice involved, and undocumented students. The list is much longer when we think about our students who are parents, our students who are first generation, and so many barriers that our students have to overcome. The good news is that both at Los Rios and San Diego Community College District, we are committed to doing everything we can to reduce the barriers for the students. And if we can reduce a little bit of friction in a lot of different ways, the chance of students having a successful outcome increases. So specific programs that are underway at the San Diego Community College District that I would want to help support include areas like the San Diego Promise. So one of the barriers that students face is paying for college. And if we can take that barrier or reduce that barrier in paying for college, that's really important. We have a similar program at the Los Rios Community College District as well. On the financial side for students, making financial aid accessible and easy to acquire is also really helpful for students who qualify. And for our undocumented students, providing access to AB 540 programs, and for undocumented students who do not qualify for AB 540, doing everything we can to create a welcoming environment for those students so that they can, first of all, find access to our community colleges. So really 2 parts of the answer to the question: what can we do to provide access and reduce barriers for students to enter into our colleges? And everything we can do to make applying to our colleges and enrolling easier is helpful. And the process starts really with our partnership with our K-12 partners. So dual enrollment is a way to provide higher education success for students who are still in high school and have a seamless path from their high school experience into our community colleges. Once students are on our campuses, we want all of the wraparound services that students need. And housing is an issue that we're thinking about a lot more at our community colleges. And congratulations to San Diego City College for securing $75 million for a housing project. In Sacramento, our Casumas River College has a $45 million grant. One of our number 1 priorities is going to be to make sure that the state doesn't try to claw that money back, that some of the budget conversations have been, as a downturn is anticipated, some of that housing money that the state has already awarded, there have been discussions about taking that money back. We're not going to let the state take that housing money back. So great to see that the shovels have already been in the ground at City College, and housing is an important need that we're addressing at the San Diego Community College District. Looking forward to November 5th, there will be an opportunity to discuss whether the bond issue might be another opportunity to include housing and address that basic need that can be a barrier for many of our students who have challenges. So housing, food insecurity is an area of focus. At Los Rios, all 4 of our colleges have pantries on campus. And if you talk to my staff, they know that I'm really focused on providing CalFresh access to our students as well. Some of the changes that took place during the pandemic make CalFresh much more accessible to our community college students. So finding a way for students to be able to access CalFresh benefits is another way that we can address food insecurity. Mental health issues are just a crushing burden for many of our students. So providing access to mental health is incredibly important for our students. And the stress and trauma of the pandemic has made that even more important. So we just had a presentation at our last board meeting in Sacramento about a very coordinated effort to expand mental health services for our students. And I'm sure that conversation is underway here in San Diego as well, in understanding that our students have mental health needs that we need to address. Because if you're hungry, if you didn't sleep well, if you are distracted by depression or other mental health issues, you're not likely to do well in your classes. So we want to do everything we can to make access to our courses and our colleges easy and make sure that we have wraparound services for our students. The pandemic really put a spotlight on the gaps between the have and the have-nots, and we knew that anyway, but in a remote environment, students who had broadband access at home and a quiet, safe learning environment had a huge advantage over students who were living in a crowded place that may not have had broadband, and they may not have had a device that was internet accessible. So we used CARES dollars and HERF dollars to help get devices to students during the pandemic. And a lot of the changes that took place during the pandemic are going to remain in place as far as students seeking more access to remote classes. So anything that makes it hard to enroll in college or be successful is that much harder for our students who are facing additional barriers, whether they're first generation, students of color, students with disabilities. So anything we can do to reduce those barriers is going to benefit the students who have the greatest challenges the most. So if I were the next chancellor of the San Diego Community College District, one of the key areas of focus would be looking at the programs and services that benefit students to make sure that we reduce as many barriers as we can to the access to our colleges and also barriers to students being successful once they're here. So we could probably spend a lot of time talking about other additional services, but I know there are additional questions, so I'll pause and go to the second question.
Thank you. So the next question will be from a member of the audience. Please describe how you have promoted a campus or district climate that is free from harassment and provides supportive measures in the areas of Title IX to students and staff.
Well, we have Title IX officers at each of our colleges and do a lot of information so that people understand what behavior should be reported. We have zero tolerance for inappropriate behavior, whether it's involved students or faculty or staff. And we just need to do everything we can to make sure that people understand what behavior is inappropriate. I think most people do. The greater problem is holding people accountable when they do not behave in the way they should. So our Title IX officers at each campus handle those complaints, and so from a formal standpoint, we want to make sure that people know where they can go when inappropriate conduct has taken place. And then on the mental health side, the victims of harassment need to understand what mental health services are available to them, because it's very traumatic to undergo that sort of experience. So we want to make sure we have good policies that are widely understood about when a Title IX violation has taken place, and make sure that those complaints are processed quickly, and that when necessary, inappropriate behavior is not tolerated and appropriate action takes place, whether that's for a student disciplinary action, or for an employee, the appropriate discipline for violations of Title IX.
Please tell us your experience managing bond campaigns and funds.
There are very few opportunities to bring a district together better than a bond campaign. So 2 parts of the question: running a bond campaign and then being responsible in spending the bond dollars. And I've had a lot of opportunity on both running bond campaigns and also making sure that the dollars are spent well. And I realize in that last sentence, I said "I" twice. And I want to emphasize that all of the successes that I talk about are not "I" successes, they are "we" successes. That to be successful in a bond campaign is very much a team effort, and to spend dollars very well requires a lot of community involvement and staff involvement as well. So when I was first an administrator a while ago in a community college, we had decided that it was time for a bond campaign, and I needed a doctoral research, a dissertation topic. So the topic I chose was successful tax and bond levy elections, because I thought the research could benefit the work I was doing. So my dissertation was a case study on 4 different community colleges. One was Santa Monica and other colleges around the country, to learn what had been really effective in bond campaigns. So that was very practical research. While I was writing my dissertation, I was responsible for leading a campaign. And a lot of the fundamentals are the same now as they were when I wrote my dissertation. You have to start internally with a successful campaign and make sure that students, faculty, and staff understand the need for the campaign. You have to really have a reservoir of understanding within the organization about what the needs are. Polling is very important in developing an effective bond campaign, because we may have an idea what we think the greatest needs are, but the reality is that voters are going to support some projects more than others. So there's a balancing project that has to go between the internally identified needs for a bond campaign and what the voter support is on different initiatives. So polling data is very, very important in crafting ballot language. And I don't want to sound like a policy wonk. I get pretty excited about ballot language because of how important it is. It is astounding how many voters are deciding how to vote when they read that ballot language for the first time. We would like to think that everyone is well informed, and many people are, but the language on the ballot is incredibly important. And understanding what voters will support in crafting the ballot language is very important. So for San Diego, between now and July, we'll do the polling data and have an understanding of what issues resonate most with voters, and then develop ballot language that reflects what those needs are, and then work with the 4 colleges in identifying projects that are within the confines of likely voter support and can be framed in the ballot language. The other part of all of the effective campaigns in a large area, there is conscious intentionality about having projects that benefit all of the regions that are represented by voters. So you want to make sure that every college is benefiting and have a really robust conversation about which projects are the highest importance. And sometimes the linkage with the state bond can be important as well. The state will have different priorities on projects, and at Los Rios, we've often coordinated our local bond issues with the state bond issue to help the state pay for some of our capital projects as well as the local bond issues. So the process is, anybody in here run a marathon? Okay, we have a few marathoners. I've run 3 or 4, and then I decided that was enough. A bond campaign is a marathon, and the starting gun for San Diego is already off in 2024. We're less than 12 months away from November 5th. So the role of the chancellor and many others is to be everywhere all the time, talking about with every group who will listen about why we need their support, and winning over those on the fence and reaffirming those who are likely supporters why they should vote for us. So the role of the Board of Trustees is very important in this process too, as elected officials, interacting with other elected officials and board members, and when appropriate, seeking endorsements from groups that whose endorsement is beneficial in a bond campaign. So the first bond campaign that I ran, if I counted up how many chicken dinners I had, in meeting with groups and targeting the areas that were going to make or break the campaign. So the night of the election, the first bond campaign I ran, I was at the county that was most likely to vote it down because there was blood, sweat, and toil in trying to get every vote out of that county. And when it's long enough ago, everything wasn't online. So when they announced the outcome, I knew we were going to win because we had enough votes in that county that we would be fine everywhere else. So it takes that sort of focus and really borderline obsession to run a successful bond campaign. You have to be ready to run a marathon. Leadership needs to go everywhere, anytime, any place to make the case. And there's two parts of the campaign. The informational campaign, you can use college funds to explain informational needs without advocating for a bond issue. So there are opportunities within the district to be sharing good information about the district in advance of a bond issue. And then it's very important to raise dollars in an outside group. I use some vacation during any bond campaign so I can make calls asking people for money. I can't do that on district time, but I can take vacation and ask people to give money to our campaign committee. So having enough money to do campaign mailers is very important as well. So the informational side of the campaign is important, and then the advocacy side. So that's the first part of the question. The second part is once you win, and I think about the analogy of being a parent. My oldest is 24 now, and I knew better, but it felt like labor and delivery was the finish line. And then I strapped her in the car to go home. And a bond election is sort of like that as well. You have the joy of winning and then realize that spending the money well is going to be an extended task over a lot of years. And in California, we have bond oversight committees. I've worked extensively with bond oversight committees to ensure that the money is spent the way we said it would be spent during campaigns. When I was at one time a chief business officer, so in that time, I worked directly with contractors and architects. And I mean, some of you have been involved in construction. I am not a fan of change orders in construction. I want the contractor to do what they said they were going to do without trying to add additional change orders. And in the San Diego district, we have project labor agreements with labor. So we have a great partner in place for a campaign. So really, in some ways, November 5th is not the only important day. That's the day that voters vote in person, but a lot of the mail-in ballots will be out sooner. So much of the work has to be done in advance of when the mail-out ballots go out. So that is a little bit of my background and experience. Really excited about the opportunity to be a part of a successful bond campaign again, and both the external benefits to that and also the internal benefits of the college community coming together in support of capital resources.
Thank you. Next question. What ways, specific ways, have you infused DEIA into recruitment and retention efforts?
So I have 13 employees who report directly to me in the Chancellor's executive staff. And then the college presidents hire the vice presidents. So we have 4 colleges and 12 vice presidents. When I became Chancellor in 2013, only one of our presidents was a person of color. And I think 4 of our vice presidents at the college level were a person of color. Now, after a little more than a decade, all of our presidents are diverse, a wonderful group of talented people. And 10 of our 12 vice presidents are people of color. So being very intentional about recruiting outstanding people who are diverse is one of the most important things that a chancellor can do. And so on the direct hires, we're incredibly proud of our success in hiring an incredibly diverse group of senior administrators at the district level and also at the colleges. But infusing that culture goes much further, and we work closely with our faculty in identifying ways to recruit more diverse applicants into our pools and have some of the really courageous conversations about minimum qualifications that may impact the amount of diverse candidates who are in faculty pools. So faculty is a long-term challenge in infusing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility for faculty because A lot of times our faculty, our wonderful faculty, stay for a long time. So when we have opportunities to, when faculty members retire, or hopefully in coming years where we have the chance to expand the number of faculty, it's really important to set the tone from the chancellor on down that DEIA is essential. And part of that is when our college presidents have pools that aren't diverse, we have the conversation, maybe we need to go out again. So we have done that many times when a pool did not have the diversity, and there, you want to be looking very closely at how diverse is the initial applicant pool, how diverse is the group who was interviewed, and how diverse is the group that are hired. And if the initial pool is much more diverse than the hiring, you need to take a step back and investigate why that is. Sacramento does not have a majority population at this time, so it is incredibly important to have a faculty and staff that reflects the face of the community. So we've had good success in doing that over the last 11 years, and meeting with the team today, I can see that's been a commitment in hiring in the San Diego Community College District as well. So we would continue that emphasis here and look at the data. If we have areas where we need to improve the goal of hiring to reflect the community, we would talk about how to do that and what steps we could do, what steps we could take. The first step is hiring, and then the second step is to make sure that when you hire diverse applicants, the supports are in place that they can be successful. And we hired 3 college presidents in the last year. And one of the things that I'm doing now to support new college presidents is making sure that we work with each new college president to have a coach, someone who works only with the president to be a sounding board for someone, what their needs and challenges are. Being a first-time college president is really hard. Being a first-time chancellor is really hard as well. So we want to have the supports for administrative employees to make sure that they're successful. And when I hire college presidents, I hope they stay forever, but we also have a really good record of bringing in diverse people who are outstanding, and then they get promoted. So I do everything I can to keep talented people as long as possible, but when the time comes where people who work with me have an opportunity for a promotional opportunity, we'll sit down and talk about how to interview. Maybe after today, you'll say, who am I to tell anybody else about how to interview? But to help candidates to be well prepared for that next position. So I think when people come to the Los Rios district and work with me, part of the understanding is that I want to support them in any way I can to be successful in the job they have now. And if they have a promotional opportunity at some point, to support them in that, keep them as long as we can, but also have a culture where there's support so that people want to come to an organization where they're going to have that kind of support. And I think those are reasons why we've had tremendous success at the administrative level in diversifying our senior leadership, and a lot of progress throughout our organization. We've made great progress in the last 10 of having a faculty and staff and administration that does reflect the diversity of our community.
So the next question is from the audience. How are you working towards the California Community College Chancellor's Office Vision 2030?
So Sonia Christian, the new chancellor, is I'm not as old as it makes me sound, the 6th statewide chancellor that I've worked with. So each chancellor has an agenda and some goals that they want to achieve. And I have always thought that it is incredibly wise to work with the chancellor's office and be supportive to the extent possible publicly. If there are disagreements, I pick up the phone and call the chancellor. So whether it was a new funding formula, some of the contentious issues that have been involved with the chancellor's office in the last 10 years, I always try to have a good relationship with the chancellor. The Vision 2030 goals, one of my great trustees, Pamela Haynes, is also on the board of governors at Los Rios. So our strategic plan has always had an eye towards what the statewide goals were as well. So we have pretty good alignment between our district strategic plan and the 2030 goals. And some of the resources that follow from the state level for Vision 2030 are important to keep track of. So the interaction, the chancellor's office, as all of you know, does not have the authority generally to tell districts what to do, but to recommend. So we've done the best job that we can to have a collaborative relationship with the Chancellor's office. And if the new Chancellor wants to host a town hall meeting, we do that to talk about the goals. And Sonia Christian has, I think, some goals that we're all behind in expanding dual enrollment. And her focus on DEIA, I think, is very admirable. So I'm excited about our new state chancellor, and look forward to working with her for many years to come. And there's always some give and take that what the Board of Governors and the Chancellor's office does may not be exactly what our district would do, but to the extent we can find common ground between those goals and our own strategic plan, I think that makes sense.
Next question. What is your current leadership engagement in the communities you serve?
Communities, plural. A lot of different communities, and you could answer that a lot of different ways, but I want to talk about communities at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level. So at the local level, anyone who serves as chancellor of a large urban community college district will have a seat at a lot of important tables. So that has been true in my time in Sacramento. The regional organizations want the chancellor of the community college to be involved. The economic development organizations in Sacramento, it's the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, the Greater Sacramento Chamber of Commerce, Valley Vision, the Sacramento Valley is a regional group. So I've served on all of those boards, and at one time or another been president of most of those boards. And I've also served on hospital boards in the region. So having that interaction with business leaders. And healthcare has been a fascinating experience where a lot of similarities between healthcare and higher education. So serving on hospital boards has been very helpful, where I'll come back from a board meeting and offer a few suggestions maybe and think, well, how will that apply to higher ed? So at the local level, have been very involved in the organizations you would expect a chancellor to be involved in. But I think more important than being at the table is making sure that you have an impact for the community college district. So in all of my board memberships, my thought is, how can we build relationships that will benefit our students? How can we be in the forefront of workforce development? How can we make sure that these other community leaders always think of our community college just as quickly as they think of the University of California or CSU? So in the local leadership with the educational ecosystem, also very important that now I've worked with 3 different presidents of Sacramento State and 3 different chancellors at UC Davis. So Los Rios is really kind of the convener of the higher education group because we've had stability of leadership. So whenever, many of you know Luke Wood, whenever Luke came as president of Sacramento State, one of the first calls I made was to Luke, and Gary May, the chancellor of UC Davis, said, we need to come together and have lunch and talk about how we can work together. So at the local level, whether it's higher education or the business community, incredibly important to be involved. And I've had a depth of involvement in the time that I've been a chancellor, and also when I was in Santa Cruz, the same was true. At the statewide level, our system is huge, but in a lot of ways, the relationships that you build at the statewide level have lasting importance. So I served as 2 terms as president of the statewide CEO board of the Community College League of California. So had a lot of great opportunities bringing presidents and chancellors together at a time when there were some contentious issues. When the new funding formula came into place, I was chair of the CEO board, and also worked really closely with other CEOs to improve the accreditation process. And in February, when the teams come, I think the good news is that your ICERs, the report you'll provide in accreditation, won't be 500 pages. They'll be closer to 100 pages. So that statewide leadership effort on accreditation has had tangible benefits for all of our colleges across the state. In the last couple of years, there are 23 multi-college districts in California. And again, the years sneak by. And now I'm the longest serving chancellor of a multi-college district in California by a couple of years. And there were so many new chancellors coming in that I thought there would be great value in all of us connecting from time to time. So I emailed all 22 chancellors and said, if you're interested, we'll try a Zoom meeting this Friday. And the participation has been great from other chancellors around the state. So that's another statewide leadership opportunity where multi-college districts share a lot of common issues and questions. So once every month or two, we'll send out a Zoom for what we unofficially call the Chancellor's Roundtable, and half or more of the chancellors at any given time will come together. We'll talk about the budget. After the January budget comes out, we'll have a Chancellor's Roundtable Zoom. And then at statewide meetings, now chancellors from the 23 community colleges come together. And with so many new chancellors, 18 out of the 23 chancellors across the state have been chancellors for 5 years or less. So we're in one of those generational shifts where a lot of chancellors in the state are relatively new. So it's been incredibly, it's a two-way learning streak. For those of us who have been around a little longer, some of you know Francisco Rodriguez in Los Angeles. Francisco's been around for a while. He and I still think of ourselves as being young leaders because at one time we were, and now we're able to share some of the experiences we've had with other new CEOs. So at the state level, those leadership experiences have been incredibly valuable. At the national level, Los Rios has been involved in a group called the Global Community College Leadership Network. And I'm past president now of that organization with urban colleges from around the United States and some in Europe as well. We meet twice a year and are able to share challenges and opportunities. So that national leadership has been incredibly helpful. It's hard sometimes to get out of the California bubble, but that national involvement is a good chance to hear some innovative practices in other states, and also just the affirmation that the problems aren't that different in other states as well. People dealing with large, complicated organizations have a chance to come together and share with peers what some of the opportunities are. Another national leadership opportunity, I serve on a board called the Higher Education Research and Development Institute, which is focused on technology. So twice a year before another national convention, this group of CEOs from around the country comes together and here's presentations from companies who are developing new technology solutions. So hearing what some of the cutting edge technology solutions are has been very important. So I've been very fortunate in my career to be able to build strong relationships in the leadership realm, both at the local level, at the state level, and the national level.
Thank you. In continuing the theme of community engagement, how can we better engage our local employers and align our programs to best suit their needs?
I think the simple answer is we have to ask, and we have to be intentional in asking. Healthcare coming out of the pandemic is an area where the healthcare systems are just starting to wrap their arms around how huge their personnel needs are. That so many nurses and other professionals after the pandemic have left the field, that the healthcare providers are just starting to get a sense how immense the challenge is. So at the national level, Sacramento has an annual event through the Chamber of Commerce called Cap to Cap, Capital to Capital, where the Chamber takes a large group from Sacramento, the capital of California, to the capital of DC. And we meet with our national representatives, and Congresswoman Doris Matsui was very interested in healthcare when we were there in the spring. And Congresswoman Matsui suggested to me that we hold a summit on healthcare employment needs. When a congresswoman suggests something, I do it. So in the spring, we held a summit for healthcare. We invited key people from all of the 4 largest healthcare systems in Sacramento to come together and share what their employment needs are. And we also invited the whole ecosystem of higher ed. So Sacramento State was there, UC Davis. So it was a two-way sharing. We shared what our programs are, and the healthcare providers shared what they needed. So out of that have come conversations about what are, and some education too, some of the highest needs were not what I thought they were. So have to ask employers what those needs are, and then be responsive to what the needs are as well. So on healthcare, 2 of our 4 colleges have nursing programs. We want to look at innovative solutions, and one of them that is really interesting is the potential of a community college baccalaureate in nursing. So I think that's going to be a topic of conversation in the next year or 2 about whether now is the time to look at our community colleges responding to the nursing shortage through expanding to a baccalaureate program. That's a recent example of listening to the employers. Have to ask, And a lot of our employers don't have the patience for some of the committee meetings that we have. So you have to find a way to be concise in meeting with employers and make sure that their voices can be heard so that we can respond to what their needs are.
Earlier in the hour, you spoke about your experience with campaign funds and bonds in particular. What is your philosophy, and this one's about funding, around inexperience with securing outside funding for the district?
So outside funding, I'm going to answer the question for any outside resources outside of the state allocations. So the state allocation is fairly, I started to say straightforward. It's not straightforward at all. It's incredibly complicated, but it's well known. And we at least understand what the current funding formula is from the state of California and how we can maximize revenues for our students from state apportionments. We want to do everything we can to make sure that San Diego is getting at least its fair share of state dollars. Those dollars are not enough. So community colleges in recent years have done a much better job the way universities did for many years at looking at outside funding. So one source of funding where community colleges have a lot of headroom outside of the state is federal funding. 2 years ago in the Cap to Cap meeting to Washington, D.C., I spent all of my time with Congressman Ami Bera from the Sacramento region and the senatorial staffs to obtain what they refer to as congressionally, it used to be earmarks, but they don't like to use the phrase earmarks. So that was an example where Congressman Bera was very supportive of the Los Rios Prison Reentry Program. Just a wonderful program, providing services both behind the walls and also transition services for students who are transitioning from justice involved back to the workforce. So we spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. securing the earmark funds, I think $5 million in funds. So that's an example of a source that has not been a traditional funding source for most community colleges. And we've worked with an advocacy group in Washington, D.C. who knows how that process works. So, I mean, federal funding, that's one example. And many of the federal grant funds, having a really intentional approach to TRIO funds, HSI funds. I think most of the colleges in both Sacramento and San Diego now are HSI eligible. So once you cross that threshold, accessing HSI funds to benefit our Latinx students is incredibly important, and other federal funds. For private funds, there are a couple of different levels or layers of private funding. Sometimes foundations are a great source of outside funding. And the usual suspect foundations, whether it's Lumina or Gates, the question has to be what strings come with the funding. So you have to be very thoughtful about partnering with some of the philanthropic foundations. In the state of California, the Irvine Foundation is a foundation we work with, College Futures, and then several foundations like the Presby Foundation in San Diego I saw had made a donation to the Promise program. So working really closely with the well-funded philanthropic foundations is a great source of outside funding. Very relationship-based too. Most of those foundations are going to call people they know to invite an application. So the relationship piece of participating with philanthropic foundations is really important. The last piece, and maybe what people think of most, is asking individuals for money. And how many of you think that sounds unpleasant to ask somebody for money? I want to tell you it's one of the most rewarding things that I have done as a president or chancellor is asking individuals to support our students. We had all of our major donors, and I think we counted that as 500,000 or more, and we had a room full of major donors together. And to a person, they shared that outside of some personal event like their marriage or the birth of their children, the most meaningful thing they had ever done was given money to our colleges. And that was incredibly validating to me as someone who enjoyed meeting people who wanted to do good and finding a pathway for them to do something that did good and also made them feel very good too. So I've had the opportunity to ask successfully many times donors for a significant donation of $500,000 or $1 million. I want to tell you, they haven't always said yes. When they said no, We left friends and talked about another day and what the right opportunity was. And I think the potential in the San Diego region for personal philanthropic donations is really good. And no knock on the Stanfords of the world. Why would anyone give money to Stanford? Their endowment is massive. If you give money to Stanford, you're just taking sand to the beach. If you give money to a community college, that same amount of money can transform a lot of lives. So all of those sources of outside revenue are things we want to consider. And I think there's great potential in both the federal funding, philanthropic foundations, and individuals who have been successful financially who want to give something back. And one of the most enjoyable parts of my job has been meeting with people who want to help people. And guess what? I've got a wonderful opportunity for you to give back and have an impact far greater than if you gave to what you think of maybe as being a more prestigious college or university, because you can see the impact. And then when we connect our students, and at Los Rios every year now we have a scholarship event where we invite the donors, and the individual students get a chance to thank their donor. And it's just so powerful. A lot of tears are shed when people actually get to see the student who they help. So one of the most important things that a chancellor does is try to maximize resources to benefit students, faculty, and staff. And I've not been shy about asking for resources at the state level or from foundations or from individuals. And I'm excited about the potential to do that in San Diego as well.
You ready for your last question?
Sure.
We're going to talk a little bit about how you maximize resources, and it's technology. So technology is both expensive but critical to our district. How would you fund the efforts to ensure that we are up to date and current on all of our technology needs?
Before I answer that last question, I want to thank Amy for hosting today. She has heard me talk a lot today. So we give Amy a round of applause.
Yeah, that's okay.
And also I want to thank the folks who set up the technology today. Let's give them a round of applause. And that's a good segue. You were sharing that you do IT work. And this is another thing, other duties as assigned. Technology was really important before the pandemic. After the pandemic, it is that much more important as we have many more remote courses using technology and many more remote services. And the way we're funded has not caught up with meeting our technology needs. So how do you do that? How do you find the funding? Part of it goes to the previous question. Are there opportunities for private funding on particular initiatives at times? Is there an opportunity for a major donor to help with a technology project? But those are temporary answers. And I think the long-term answer is to look closely at the existing budget. And first of all, are there efficiencies that we could gain? Having served as a chancellor of a multi-college district, the beauty of our organization is sometimes we do things in a really decentralized way and it works great. Sometimes there are opportunities to align our work together and avoid duplication. Some of the things that we've done in recent years in Los Rios is we have the candid conversation among the 4 colleges. You want to order that product, but if you order that product and this college orders a different project, the district IT is going to have a hard time supporting that product. So we just try to be really straightforward about it. We can't afford to do that anymore. And the results are almost inevitably bad. I shared with another group today, at one point, we had 5 different web design tools. And if one college's tool crashed and the person who knew how to use it was gone, there was no way to fix it. So we've had conversations about in technology, we want to stop doing 5 different things as the default and try to align our work together and then understand if there are really unique needs, we can address that as well. So efficiencies don't get you all the way to having the funds you need for technology, but it's a good start. And it's something that we have control over without having to have changes in the funding formula or outside impact. And at the state level, our funding formula is way behind. I think part of the conversation would be, should there be a categorical program that benefits technology? Are there economies of scale statewide? How many of you, anybody teach using Canvas? So pros and cons to having one learning management system, but economies of scale. And there have been times, maybe that was the time, where the state incentivized districts to use a tool with a negotiated price. There may be other opportunities statewide to leverage the buying power of the state to drive down some of the prices. And there's discussion about ERP. I'm not sure how you would ever have one ERP system for the whole state, but the idea of economies of scale and efficiency is probably worth the conversation. Then we talked about the bond issue. Another way to meet some technology needs is through the capital funds of a bond campaign. And you want to make sure that you're not using bond funds for operational dollars, but there are some infrastructure needs, like possibly converting classrooms to hybrid classrooms so that someone could teach in a remote environment. There are ways of leveraging the capital dollars from a bond campaign to address the technology needs. But the technology has never been more important, and it's never been more expensive. So that's a real tension in a multi-college, community college district in California, and really across the country, and talking to my friends in other places. So we want to go every place we can to get the money, whether it's from private sources. And I talked about the Higher Education Research and Development Institute, the HERDI board that I serve on. Sometimes a district as large as San Diego can convince a vendor that you want to really discount your prices to have us as a customer going through an RFP process. But there are times, the California market for technology vendors statewide is massive. And we've been pretty effective in convincing vendors that if you get a toehold in our district, maybe you don't have to make very much money on our district, and that will give an entree to the rest of the state as well. So I think those sort of explorations for a large district like San Diego are worth having as well with some of the technology vendors. Are there ways that you could provide new technology to us? We can beta test for you. And you have to be careful about that too, that not every new idea is a good one. And some of the legacy software like PeopleSoft is very complex and very expensive. And I'm sure every district in the state is thinking about their legacy ERP, whether it's PeopleSoft or one of the others. And as things move towards the cloud, there are some opportunities to save costs with technology as well. So technology is incredibly important, and finding a way to pay for state-of-the-art technology has to be a top goal for a community college district in California in 2023, moving into 2024.
Thank you. Okay, that is all the questions we have. Thank you very much for your time today. For the audience, you have 24 hours from this morning to fill out the link if you would like to provide any comments.
I just want to thank everyone again for being here. I've appreciated the questions and also your attentiveness, and wish everyone a wonderful evening and good rest of the week. Thank you for being here.